We have some good speakers I'm going to bring up and let you listen to them a little bit. I'll interact with them, and we'll share some comments of some matters that really kind of matter these days. And one of those is just basically environmental concerns. And Dan Schaefer is with us here. I want to introduce Dan, who's the Director of Nutrient Stewardship for the Illinois Fertilizer and Chemical Association. And give him a round of applause as he comes in alongside me here. Dan, good to see you.
Good to see you too.
First of all, give us a little bit of an update. We're watching some things going on in the Midwest now. You know, for the longest time, we kind of kept an eye out on the East Coast in terms of regulatory matters, but now on either side of us, whether it's Iowa or Ohio, there's some things happening, but there's some very good, progressive, proactive things happening in Illinois, too.
That's correct. So if you look at right now in Iowa, they've got the Des Moines Water Works lawsuit, and that's about an $80 million lawsuit to 3 counties. The farmers, the landowners, the ditch commissioners in that county are being sued by the Des Moines Water Works. Bill Stowe is the manager of the Water Works. He's also a lawyer and an engineer, so he's decided that if there's any further upgrades to the water works that somebody's going to have to pay, and he's looking at the farmers in that area. He's got some pretty good data on tile nitrates and that kind of stuff, and they're going to use that. That will come to court next August, about middle of August next year, and that's a very important piece of trial that we need to watch in Illinois, because basically it's tied to the Clean Water Act. So if it's a federal lawsuit. So anything that happens in Iowa, if they rule in favor of that, comes across to us. So we could have an NPDES permit on our tile lines. We would become point source folks instead of non-point source. So currently we're non-point source. The point source folks are the sanitary districts and those kind of folks. So it's a very important lawsuit. We got to pay a lot of attention to it. Just north of there in Minnesota, in the southern counties, they're thinking about banning fall nitrogen applications, and they've got a 3-step law in place that if a certain amount of nitrates are coming out of your tile at different times, the 4th or the 3rd step is to ban any nitrogen applied before March 15th in Minnesota. That's legislation. We go out to Ohio. Toledo, Ohio was shut down for 3 or 4 days over a weekend. They couldn't take any water out of Lake Erie because of the algae bloom. It shut a city of 500,000 people down. Restaurants, everything was shut down. Bottled water was the only water source. That really kicked into high gear. Legislation came from that. Now a farmer has to have a private fertilizer applicator license, same as we do with a private pesticide license. So that's happened there. Fertilizer dealers can't spread fertilizer when there's a chance of a 1-inch rain within a 12-hour period. And so they're looking at forecasts to tell you when you can spread fertilizer if you can't incorporate it. So all those kind of things are going on around us. In Illinois, because of the farmers in Illinois and the Nutrient Research and Education Council fund that you guys pay for research, nutrient research in Illinois, basically it's all funded by the farmers. That's kept us kind of a calm island with turbulent seas all around us when it comes to nutrient regulations and those kind of things. We're okay right now, but we can't sit still and take a chance on something happening. So my stewardship message, I guess, is I'm just going to tie right into this. My stewardship message is if you're putting on fall ammonia, wait until the soil temperature is below 50 degrees and use a nitrification inhibitor. The other thing that's a really big one, we're all voluntary here in Illinois. There is no laws. Try to avoid spreading fertilizer, especially phosphates, on frozen snow-covered ground. If we can do those 2 things, we'll be okay for a while. The funding, the research that you guys are funding is looking at tile nitrates. We're looking at how much nitrates are exported to the Gulf of Mexico. That's where epoxy is zoning. That's where it's all brought in from. I mean, it's all backed up to us. Illinois contributes about 20% of the nitrates to the Mississippi River that goes to the Gulf, about 15% phosphate. We're number 1 in both of those. We're not number 1 in football. We probably won't be for quite a while, but we're number 1 in that, unfortunately. But good news. Dr. Mark David at the University of Illinois just reported a 10% reduction in nitrate loads in the Illinois River for the last 3 years. So that's a very big, important piece of legislation. The other thing, I don't know if he was going to ask me more questions, but I'm just going to keep rambling. Keep going. One of the really key things with the Nutrient Research and Education Council is there's 2 environmental groups that sit on that council. the Sierra Club and the Environmental Law Policy Group. They see everything that we're doing. They see that you guys are spending $2.5 to $3 million a year on nutrient research, and they love it. They actually went to bat for us to get that passed because it's held completely outside of state government. Madigan had to give that money up that used to be FREC in order for this to come in. They went and sat in his office and said, you're going to do this, and here's why you need to do it. And so they've been a big part of this whole thing. And having them close to us and seeing what we're doing has been very, very valuable to us.
In that decision that'll be coming down next summer in Iowa, will they be taking into account any progress that's being made out there? Are they making some progress?
Yeah, there's some progress, and I don't know which. There's another water system that they're looking at that has got a lot of cover crops, a lot of nutrient stewardship things, a lot of split applications, delayed manure applications, those kind of things in a certain area, and they have lowered the nitrates coming into the river, into the water supply lakes and things. But the problem is that lawsuit has everybody looking at it, and it could roll into legislation for Iowa basically if it goes through.
Where do we go from here in Illinois? Just continue to make more progress in the way that we have done?
Continue doing what you're doing. Over the last 10 years, we've increased production because of, number one, we got better hybrids, better root systems, but we've also done a better job with our nitrogen, our nutrient utilization. Put the nitrogen on when you know the crop's going to take it up. Put the nitrogen on, maybe if you cut back some in the fall, move some to planting time, move some more into the side dress time frame. Those are good nutrient utilization things. The other key point is pay attention to the other factors that have high yield potential. Fungicide applications, weed control, P&K, sulfur, all the other things. The right hybrids can make, if you follow Fred Belo's 7 wonders of high yield corn production, hybrids is number 3 on the list, and it's like 35 bushels the acre. Making sure you're paying attention to what hybrid. If we don't have the high yield out in that field, or we lose 20 or 30 bushel because we forgot something, we leave nitrogen in the field. We leave phosphorus in the field. So those are some of the key points.
Dan, how would you say we're doing in terms of cover crop utilization? Obviously, that's some producers have embraced it. They were longtime plowers. They say we love it. It's working for us, and for others, it's been a struggle. I know some producers have had problems with tiles in their fields and timing. Then, in terms of that next crop coming on.
Are you talking about the tiles in Indiana?
Well, yeah, it was, as a matter of fact. How did you know that?
Well, because I saw the same release. One of the things about, I think the tiles in Indiana may have been a little bit shallow tiles, and we had a really good, if you remember what March was like last year, cover crop from March 1st to March 30th tripled in length or tripled in biomass. So we had a lot of growth because we had a warm March, and their shallow tiles got those roots in there. So I don't think that's a real concern that we have to worry about year in and year out. But as far as adoption of cover crops in Illinois, we've been a little slow, but I think it's starting to pick up steam. If I would encourage somebody to do one thing with the cover crop is move to no-till soybeans and use a cover crop ahead of the soybeans. And we're showing in one of the projects you guys are funding down in Douglas County that we can remove 8 parts per million nitrate N out of the tile system by having a cover crop just ahead of soybeans and picking up that residual from the mineralization and that kind of stuff that's going on in that field.
Are we finding we can use less fertilizer, or is that a risky step to take?
Over the last 20
message from the Illinois Fertilizer and Chemical Association.
Over the last 22 years in the upper Embral water system, the nitrogen rates have stayed the same. The yields have gone up. So it's better utilization of the right amount of nitrogen that we're applying. If we use the MRTN, the maximum return to nitrogen calculator, to determine our nitrogen rate, which is based on a lot of plots that we're putting out around the state, and a response curve to nitrogen, that gives you the correct rate of nitrogen to use, and that's what we're seeing is we're using the right rate. We're not increasing the rates, but better utilization of the nitrogen we're putting on.
Some of the producers that I've been visiting with over the past year have really been embracing tissue testing and soil testing. Do you have any recommendations along that line?
At least soil test every 4 years at 2.5 acre grids, and pay attention to phosphorus and potassium levels. Pay attention to phosphorus especially, because it's another impediment or impairment into the water, and that's something else we're losing going down in the Gulf. So we want to make sure our P1s are based on the Illinois Agronomy Handbook, based on those factors that they've got in there as far as what your removal basis is and how to build up and maintain a soil test. Potassium K is not a problem. Continue to monitor that, and you know, based on the Agronomy Handbook, a K test of 300 to 350 is probably your ideal line. And the one thing we sometimes forget about is pH. Maintain that pH at 6.3, 6.5, and you'll raise high yield grain, and then we have nutrient utilization.
Very good, sir. Anything else? A parting comment you'd share with the folks?
Have a safe harvest, I guess, and pay attention to everything that's around you, and be careful out there.
Yeah, good point. Dan, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. How about a big round of applause for Dan Schaefer?